the airplanes that you flew in, what kind of shape were they in? Were they worn out? Were they new? What kind of shape were the planes in?
Well, our plane was, it was, well, we flew it from the States, and we flew it most of the time. There's a couple of times that we, like I say, that I flew in other ships. But after we'd been over there a little while, why, there was a lot of them got shot up and had to be repaired, and you couldn't say that they were really dependable anymore, you know. And we had a rough time getting them back in the air a lot of the time, you know. Sometimes we'd take another plane, and well, there was one time I flew on a plane that they had put back together, and there was none of us was of the same crew. We was all a conglomerate, but we took off and went on our mission and done our job. But it was a mingled up mess after a while, because when you have to leave your own airplane with one that you know pretty well everything is, you know where this bolt is or where that pin is. And then you get on another plane, somebody's put the thing in backwards, you couldn't get it out of there if you wanted to, you know. It's little things like that bothered me more than being scared. Get in a strange plane that I never was really too much of an organized guy, but it stands to reason if you know where these pieces of equipment are that are going to be useful, best they be mounted in such a way that you can get them loose so you can use them, you know. I never got into a position where I flat refused to fly, because I was getting paid to fly that airplane. If they told me to fly it, I usually got on it. But yes, there was a number of them that just flat wouldn't fly in it, because it had been shot up. A number of them have been shot up, and they just patched it a little bit to get the thing back in the air. And it's not a good idea to fly one of those things if you're going to have wind. And so I think these guys that you're talking about flew when we had some real high winds, and that'll tear the plane up worse than anything else. If you get into buffering and you get to snapping, and I had one time I was flying in the flaps, which you had to use when you were landing to reduce your speed. One of the flaps come loose, and it made us yaw, you know. And I thought I was going to have to use a parachute again, but he brought it in. But little things like that, that scared me more than anything else, you know. I guess I might have been scared, but didn't have sense to know it. Yeah. See, I had 2 radio compasses, and I'd plot our courses as we went along. And many times we were the lead flight, and all of the others had to drop on us. So I had to plot the course that the navigator was. And then we worked together. Of course, the navigator done the plotting, but I was doing the radio plotting, and he'd do it by section. But half the time, we'd get up in the air, and there'd be so many clouds, and you couldn't see anything. You couldn't see, no way you could keep track of it. So I was using radio beacons for plotting, and it kept us on course. And once in a while, he'd get to see through with his sections, and we worked together that way. But my main job was of course, you can't be kind of talking when you're on a bombing mission. You got to keep the radio still. But my radio compasses, I could talk in the plane and plot the courses plot the positions that we were actually flying, and then check them with the navigator.
Now, when you did the radio direction finding, I understand that didn't always work.
Well, yeah, you could get you get a reciprocal, and you got problems. Yeah, But I had a system. I'd try to plot every 12 minutes if I could. And in those 12 minutes, you could get a good good pattern, and you could tell pretty much where you were. If you got a rumble or something that you couldn't get a plot, well, then you just hang in there and tell the pilot to keep the same course. But then if he got a crosswind, then we was in trouble again, you know. But then we'd have to wait, and I'd get a new plot. I'd find out where we were. Why, we'd start all over again. And we had one houseboy there for 4 of us, I think. But I was kind of a little particular. I cleaned my own clothes and ironed my own pants. I made a little extra money by polishing shoes. A lot of guys couldn't polish shoes for sour apples. And I polished shoes when these inspections come up. I made a little extra money that way, but then a colonel come in one day and said, well, you're going to have to cut that out, Sergeant. He said, get one of the peons to do that. So, but, yeah, well, I went in 1942, and I went to Fort Logan, Colorado, in the Army. And first thing I know, they going to transfer me to the Army Air Corps. So I got me a discharge, an honorable discharge from the Army. And then a few months later, they said, well, we're going to transfer you into the Air Force. And so I got me a Army Air Corps discharge. Then I got 3 or 4 Air Force discharges and a retirement form. And then after I got out of there, I went to work for Sprint down here in town. Stayed with them for 20 years.
How did you get in? Now, you were so young. How did you get in so young?
Oh, I was pretty much an electrician. I worked with a radio man, Ted Carrico, who was a radio repairman in my hometown. And he, of course, the war come on, and you couldn't get radio tubes, you couldn't get TV tubes, you couldn't get radio. And I also had built my own amateur radio station, and I'd operated that for quite a while. And so.
But you weren't old enough. You were too young.
Huh?
You were too young. You weren't old enough yet. You needed to be, what, 18? I thought you were supposed to be 18 to go.
Yeah.
But you must have gone in 16 or, like you say, 17.
Yeah, well, I was 17 in China that day when he asked me.
So you might have gone.
But I'd already been repairing radios and working with radios and built my own stations and everything. And quite electronic nut. Yeah.
But why did they let you? Didn't you have to show your birth certificate?
Well, yeah, I guess you did, but I don't know how it turned out. But I was strictly underage when I got over there.
When you came back, were you able to tell people about what you did in China? Were your family, your friends, were they interested?
Well, I didn't talk too much out of it. It was too bloodthirsty for a lot of them. And I kind of wanted to just forget it, you know. It's something I'd done. I'd been there and done that. And I found as you pass through life, if you tread water, well, you get by a lot better, you know.